Oh, here comes Robert. Okay, so we have everyone that's going to be joining us.
Can you?
So whenever you're ready, Kevin.
Oh, okay. Oh, is Robert with us now?
He is, yep.
Robert, how are you feeling?
Great. I actually have no symptoms at all, but I tested positive, so I stayed home.
Good idea.
Well, stay positive.
Waiting to say that.
Oh,
Stay positive.
Keep the day job.
Okay, so first order of business, I guess we're approving 2 minutes on instead of 1.
Correct, we had a close,
14th and December 20th.
yes, actually, after the call to order, I'll do the roll call.
Okay.
We have Robert Dew,
Here via Zoom.
Kevin Fuller,
Here.
Don Jensen,
Here.
Tom Shifsky,
Here.
Archie Vickerman,
Here.
Terry Furlong,
Here.
Tim Cole,
Here.
Brett Gary.
Here.
We have a full house. And from staff, we have John Stark, the Executive Director and New City Manager, and myself, Lisa Ritchie, EDA Admin Assistant. In attendance, we also have 2 representatives from JD Vang that will be doing a presentation on interest in the city-owned parcels at 2395 Margaret. I'm going to adopt the agenda.
Okay, we need to adopt the agenda. So move. Second. Favor? Aye.
Robert was at an, oh, he's not voting, sorry.
I can't vote. I'm
Correct. Okay,
Okay, the next order would be is to approve the minutes from December 14th and December 20th. So move. Second. All in favor? Go ahead and we'll approve that.
who seconded? Don? Okay,
Is there anybody here that would like to speak on behalf of the public?
we have no attendees on Zoom other than Robert.
Okay.
So no one from the public is in attendance.
So we'll drop down to business and action items. Or do we have to do anything on the public hearing?
There is no public hearing, so we'd skip that.
All right, so item A is development interest in the parcel on 2395 Margaret Street. We have some people here today for that.
Yeah, can I, Kevin, can I interject real quick?
Sure.
So JB Vang is in the room today. I can't see who is there. So is it Jackson or who's with us? Who's with us from JB Vang?
Jackson
and
and-
Justin both.
Oh, Jackson and Justin. Okay. So I met with Jackson and Justin a while back. They had expressed interest in the properties that city owns across the street. And we talked through a couple concepts on the plan, the initial plan that they had presented. I just gave them a little bit of feedback on where the city was headed, where our heads were, not necessarily specifically to that property, but on some key issues related to the city at large and just redevelopment downtown. So they've kind of refined their plan, and they wanted to come in and present it and get some feedback from the EDA today, just on thoughts, comments on how things fit. So with that, if you guys are ready, I assume they can present there in the room.
Now that we got it figured out.
Anybody, did you hear any of that or no?
Yeah, we got it now. You were echoing in the background because it was coming through two different speakers, but so we got it twice.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We got it figured out now.
The short version, I've met with JB Vang a while back. They have a plan and refined it. Here to present it. There you go.
Okay, sounds good.
And maybe before we just jump right in, so my name is Justin Fincher. I'm with JB Bank. I just want to give you just a quick elevator pitch on JB Bank, so you know kind of a context of our experience and kind of where we focus. So we're a small developer located out of St. Paul. We've been around over 15 years, formerly known as JB Realty. The past 10 years, we've really focused in more on development. Before that, it was really more like a brokerage house. But over the, like I said, over the past 10 years, we've primarily been in development management type services. And over the past 5 or 6 years, we've recently gone into more multifamily type housing. So we have 2 projects right now, one under construction, one about to break ground in St. Paul, Minnesota. With the city of St. Paul, both are 4% line tech deals. One was it 4% line tech, so low income housing tax credits. And so those, one of them was about to turn over actually 2 weeks here. It's called Parkway Apartments, 60 units. Again, all affordable housing. Okay, in St. Paul, and then the other one, 55 units, and we'll be breaking ground in about 2 or 3 months on that. And that's okay along University Ave. We also have a number of projects in the pipeline. Another one of them is through the Super RFP through the Minnesota Housing and Finance Administration, MSA. We have a number of market rate workforce housing projects currently in our pipeline. So that's just a quick elevator pitch. Besides housing, we do a lot of owners rep related services for what we call purpose-driven organizations, a lot of nonprofit groups, educational groups, things of that nature. So that's really our bread and butter and what we've been doing for the past 10 years. And so, you know, leading up to this, we've just been in preliminary conversation with Robert here related to the site across the street, obviously. And, you know, what makes us excited about the project is it kind of fits our wheelhouse of size of work that we look for. Since we are a smaller developer, we like to see for housing projects in between like 50 to 100 units. It's kind of really of our sweet spot. And we've done some preliminary fit planning, which Jackson will get to here in a second, but kind of proves that this is kind of the right size for us. So we've done some really quick underwriting and kind of quick fit plan assessment of the site to see if it's something we'd like to pursue, and we think it is. But before we get too far down the road and in terms of, you know, site due diligence and things like that, we obviously want to make sure it's something that you know, the city of North St. Paul would be willing to pursue with us. And so we look forward to, you know, feedback and obviously your support. So with that, I'll pass it over to Jackson, who's our development manager. And he's going to
All right, I'm Jackson Cruikshank, JB Bank, development manager at the site. Why don't I get up and next to the screen? So as you can see, the site overview, most you know, 2395 Margaret Street consists of 6 different parcels, 0.79 acres. Quite a hike from here. I know, I get it. You probably haven't seen it before, but this is what we're looking at. So currently zoned MU1, downtown mixed use, which allows for 4 stories of housing if there is mixed use incorporated in it with some retail. The comp plan also encourages denser development in the downtown district. So we feel that this use that we are looking at is kind of a use that is looked at by you guys as well. And as far as the site plan and parking, can you please go to the next slide? So this is kind of our layout right here. As you can see, we have 30 stalls of structured parking, and this would be on level 1 or ground level. And then we have on the back 52 surface stalls of parking. So 82 stalls total. We have our commercial space on the end right here, and that is approximately 2,000 square feet. You know, it's subject to change, but that's originally what we anticipated. We have a fitness room, office, and community room. Again, those are subject to change as well, but we're going to have some common area amenities for the residents. And if you go to the next slide, please. And then this is kind of the layout as well on floors 2 through 4. So it's going to be studios and ones primarily, but we're going to probably have a few 2-bedrooms as well. The total parking stalls, 2 units right now. So we have 82 parking stalls to 69 units, which is anticipated over the entire building. So the let's see, the ratio would be 1.2 to 1 stalls to units. And then the parking ratio from stalls to bedrooms is approximately 1 to 1, anticipating some 2 bedrooms within it. That we've done on a lot of other projects as well. And we feel like it's an appropriate where it's not overparked and it's also not underparked at the same time. And also feel free to jump in with any questions. We'll get to all the questions at the end, but if you have any questions, go ahead and ask.
The studios is not it's just 1 unit with no bedroom.
Correct. Yep.
And it's 500 square feet.
It is approximately 500 square feet. So we're going to have some a little bit larger. And again, this is all very preliminary.
Sure.
And so we haven't fine-tuned everything, but yes, that's where it's going to be about. And the units are contemplated for the sizes, and the rents are contemplated to be between the 50 to 80% AMI, and that's average median income for the rents. Now, if you wanted me to kind of give examples of actual numbers, studios would be between 1,000 and 1,150. 1 bedrooms would be between 1,300 and 1,450, and 2 bedrooms would be anywhere between 1,700 and 1,900. And the sizes, again, what we were just talking about, studios between 500 to 550 square feet, 1 bedrooms between 650 and 750 square feet, and 2 bedrooms between 950 and 1,050 square feet for 2 bed. So that's kind of the gist of it. I mean, we're currently here, as Justin stated before, to kind of get your guys' blessing and work towards maybe some sort of agreement on the site. But we'd like to, at this time, get your comments and questions on our overall concept, at least.
I think when a similar project was presented a while ago, the outside character of it just did not fit in regards to kind of what we're looking for. I think we match, per se, maybe this building, or just look awkward. That project did go away, but that was one of the, I think, the biggest complaints was it just didn't fit within the core of the other buildings.
Have you done any preliminary plans on what it might look like?
We haven't too much. We've looked at kind of, what the downtown district is, and I know you guys used to. I don't know if you still have the downtown district architectural guide that you have to follow. Is that still a thing?
We do have a design manual. It's a guide.
Yeah.
It's not, it has not been adopted with the resolution.
Okay, so I looked at the guide before, so I see some of, incorporating brick, things of that nature, but we haven't done a deep dive into what the actual building will look like on the outside yet.
That's actually part of the planning commission now.
Okay.
We combined the two, so
Gotcha.
they do the design and
Gotcha.
I think one thing that's, we're familiar with the plan that I think you're referencing. What we're showing here is, Jackson said, just go back one slide. You have some commentary on the first floor, especially coming out the corner. So you can see, making a vision that there's going to be, transparency in the windows all along where you see that portion. And then we will have to work through, since we aren't going underground with parking, we will have to work through how the exterior facade looks outside of where that parking garage is, but there's definitely ways to address that with, nice masonry, finished block material, and you can do kind of, you can do window openings in the parking garage. It's not a big deal, but something to help give it more like pedestrian scale. So I'm confident that we can meet that concern. It's just a matter of, those are design iterations that we have to work through with the architects and things of that nature. And I think maybe just a couple areas to clarify. I mean, on this site plan, especially, it doesn't show the property boundary line, which we probably should have shown, but this does assume that there's some type of shared easement or agreement with that curb cut to, I think it's this North St. Paul surface parking lot to actually enter in, or actually would be exit out of our site. So that's one thing we would have to work through, but I think those are just kind of more nitty-gritty details that I'm not as concerned about, but just wanted to point it to your attention. And then, you know, in talking with Robert, it seems like the coffee shop or some type of retail supply on the first floor is important. We're all for that. I haven't looked really deeply at all into, you know, how that impacts underwriting, what kind of rent can we get, things of that nature. But all again would be next steps. And then the parking ratio, Jackie mentioned 1.2 to 1. That's for residential only. So if we need some kind of designated stalls for retail, it's something that we would have to work through as well. And then the other thing that came to mind that Robert brought up last time we met is, you know, kind of maybe some outdoor public realm space, even if it's just like a small little pocket park or courtyard. It's not shown on this plan, but I think we could work through those details if that's something that's important to the city. You know, those are kind of all more detailed. I say that we would look at it next step. So
I know another point was if there was to be a coffee shop drive-through, you know, if it's a possibility, we do some sort of drive-through on the side there.
mm-hmm. And I mean, I think there would be a way to make that work pretty easily with this. It's just, you know, it might impact parking stalls and things of that nature. Something we could definitely look into.
I think you should put in anytime fitness. That's something the downtown needs.
Maybe won't.
Then you wouldn't have to put a fitness room in your own building.
So we've seen that having great success with a lot of apartment projects. Obviously, it's amenity for the neighborhood, but obviously tenants too. So
Yeah, if you could combine the two together and it can basically pay for itself.
In the future, you know, I'll be more familiar with these things before they come to you, but I'm kind of seeing this for the first time with you guys, and yeah, so I've got some questions too. So did you say you are going to apply for 4% tax credits?
That's one thing I didn't quite touch on. So this is not an actual MyTech deal. So no, this will not be a tax credit deal. This is what's called either workforce or attainable housing. So it's not going to be a luxury high-end market rate complex, but it's going to be somewhere in the realm of comparable to the rents of other newly built apartments, such as down the street. So that's kind of the area.
Okay, and are you getting funding from Minnesota Housing or from any other public?
We are not. So another big thing that we're going to have to drive for is throughout the numbers, we're going to have to do some sort of, you know, be creative, whether that's TIF or some other source of financing. That's probably going to be needed for this project.
Yeah,
and not to say that we wouldn't pursue MHFA if that's a direction that,
Correct.
you know, North St. Paul wanted to go. But there, yeah, I think we would need to look at some kind of soft finance, if you will, on how.
and so on a site like this for a housing project, the EDA has the ability to do tax increment financing, but only certain kinds of districts, only an economic development district or redevelopment district. I don't believe that an EDA can do a housing district, which this would be. So we would need to work with the Housing Redevelopment Authority in that context. If a housing TIF district were something that were to be considered. But there are other, like I said, I'm hearing all this for the first time too. There are other, you know, public ways we could get involved in terms of like a land reduction, land write down, or other ways we could get involved.
Yeah, the currently land is anticipated. I had a number a few years back, and kind of threw that in there for what was anticipated for the land. So, you know, we can work through those numbers too, but it's definitely not at zero right now. So, yeah, we can get creative, I guess.
I think that was the first apartments that were taken at the new Sentinel building was those studio. I think those are pretty popular, the studio apartments.
Man, that would be in line with what we hear in St. Paul too. Those are the first to rent because they're the most affordable. All comes down to just like what can you afford monthly in the studios. Yeah.
And so at the surface is the parking that's there. Is that what podium parking then? It's not underground.
It's not underground. talking with Robert, it sounded like it wouldn't be a good idea to go underground, just kind of given just the conditions of the soils, and the water table. So yeah, it'd be more of like a podium type construction, so most likely like precast or something along those lines, that first floor for structure, and then we clad it with, improved materials, obviously, and then stick frame above.
And so when you say 50% to 80% AMI workforce housing, is that where you feel like, because at this point in time, you haven't gone into, forms of assistance that people do provide you think that's just where the market wants us to be?
Yeah, I've done like preliminary market studies, if you will, of just apartments surrounding the area and other general areas like this. And that's kind of where it came to, or where the rents are renting at.
Yeah, and when we looked at that, I mean, it was in line with, like Jackson said, like current market costs, but we looked at, for example, if it was to, we did our own analysis on sizing that, see if it could match with those rent levels, and it seems to be kind of right in line. We could get TIF generated on the property, that there wouldn't be much additional subsidy that would be needed. But that said, we haven't looked closely, kind of at the first floor retail or coffee shop or whatever it is, very closely in terms of like how that impacts things.
Can I throw a couple comments out?
Sure.
So you answered a couple of the questions in the process. I think that I believe it was Mayor Furlong that made a point about the facade, the architecture. And I know you guys, there's no elevations in here, but I know we talked about that last time and you're sensitive to that. So, as you move forward, just want to make sure that we're not staring at horizontal vinyl siding, because that's not going to fly across the street from City Hall. I think in looking at, I'm a little concerned still about the size of the retail space. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's a city, you talked about the easement for access on the parking there off Sppa, and that adjacent parking lot, I believe, is city owned, if I'm got that correct. And to me, it seems like when you go through the design iterations, I would advocate to see a larger retail space, not asking you to take it out of your revenue components, your units, but to probably take it out of your parking, and then create some sort of shared parking agreement to give you access to those spaces over there. So you had ample parking. I just don't think that we can fit a meaningful retail, and I'm thinking food and beverage type service, in 2,000 feet. And that's something that I think we are really going to need here in town, particularly if you add these residents on top of all the other new residents. And it's so just something to consider when we go through the iterations about a concept that would give us something closer to 4,000 or 4,000 or minus, I guess, so we can get a restaurant operation in there. And then maybe we can be creative, take it out of your parking and be creative and do a shared parking in the city lot there adjacent to it. So I also had a question about, just kind of what you thought, what type of residents this would attract, but I think you kind of address that in talking about the large number of studios and getting a rentable space. But in terms of demographic, do you have any thought process there? Are we talking students? Are we talking, going to Century? Are we talking kids moving out of the house? Any thoughts in that regard, or do you have any information to provide there?
I mean, we're preliminary at this point. I think, part of the very next steps for us, we get the go ahead, is to conduct a market study so we can firmly answer that. But generally speaking, like you said, Robert, we have a lot of studios, so we're thinking this is kind of more millennials, kind of younger working class, people that have professional jobs. Maybe they just moved out of mom and dad's apartment, or maybe they've been in the market for a while and they're just, looking for a nice new apartment with, secure parking. And it's pretty common that we're seeing there's a lot of that kind of submarket in St. Paul and Minneapolis, and we see it here too. So, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
in line with what you've seen with other developments in town here.
yeah, kind of. I think in concept, I mean, I think it's an appropriate, use for the site. Again, I don't think we'll be able to shortcut it on some of the architectural components. And I'm not entirely sure what the EDA can provide other than say, yeah, it looks great at this point without understanding what the exchange is. The new city manager has got a lot of experience in this regard, so I'm not really sure what the next step would be for JB Vang and their folks visa project, because he mentioned if we can get a blessing, we can go get our housing study done. But there's the blessing for the EDA other than to say, yeah, we like them, we're on board. Is that fair, John? Did you hear that?
Even just the blessing from the EDA is going to help the new city manager at least look. I have not met them in depth and talked with them, but at least to help understand, like, hey, the EDA is on board with this. Maybe I should also be on board with this, and we can have a more in-depth conversation with them as well. But at this time, I think just having your guys' go ahead would be a great first step. I'm not sure what else you'd like to see, but
yeah, I mean, this is all back and forth, give and take. I mean, we just, we don't want to pursue something in a vacuum, and we're just always looking for feedback, and just even a formalities, right? But a handshake of this is what we're looking at and pursuing, knowing that, there is potentially a conversation about TIF that might have to come to the table, whether that's now or, eventually. I'm not certain how that process works for North St. Paul, but we're willing to, I guess, continue the dialogue, and we hope that you guys are as well. And I guess just looking for that initial kind of go ahead, and we'd be happy to keep moving things forward. Hopefully, eventually, sooner rather than later, getting to some type of development agreement or some type of purchase agreement to allow us to actually start, the formal due diligence and actually spending money with an architect. So that's always now, right? Is we don't have anything under contract, so we can't hire an architect formally to start doing facade studies and formal rendering. I think we could work towards at least one exterior rendering as an initial kind of first take, but we're not going to be able to have multiple back and forth without knowing that we have a project. So I don't know. I just didn't really answer your question, Robert, but I guess
that's good. And I don't know if there was a disconnect or not, but I mean, the new city manager is sitting in the room too. So maybe. Okay. So I think I'm of the opinion, and I was just taking a look here. The project as it sits is, it's consistent with the redevelopment master plan or zoning. And I think the sensitivity from an EDA's perspective, and I'll let the other folks comment as well, but we've talked a lot about, what's next for the city with all these new residents. We got to be able to serve them because we want them to get their coffee and their lunch and their dinner if we can in town. Not go elsewhere for it. And so we have to be cognizant of that and try to create those spaces as part of any new developments. We're not flush with a bunch of land. So anytime we're doing that, we need to try to carve out spaces for that. We have had conversations with another kind of, I'll say food, and I'm using the term food and beverage folks that have some interest in town that, you know, that maybe we could, you know, marry the parties and that would help the cause for both folks. But I think by and large, as I see it, as long as we get, again, the aesthetics and the architecture right, get some of that commercial, get that commercial space size right. And I don't want to, I'm not discounting your plan, but again, 2,000 feet just feels a little token for what I think we need, not necessarily as it sits in this type of building. I think we would need a little bit more to do something effective there. So, but other than that, I'm in support of it if we can get those things right.
I think, Robert, too, and the group that the green space behind there is owned by the people that own the big building. And
That's owned by Gary.
yep, so he had looked at one time as potentially developing this property. But I think he would be inclined also to maybe allow some of that property to be given up too for a project. You know, and then you're moving back further and be able to do some more work. So I like to work a conversation with Gary too, because he's getting up there in age, and you know, he may not want to do anything. He may want to give that up. And I think we have to have a conversation with him anyhow, because as part of that easement to the north there, isn't that Gary's?
I think I think this is platted full, or, you know, as at least, you know, as it's shown here. I think they're fully within the city-owned lots, but Jackson, maybe you can speak to that, but that's what it appears to me.
Sorry, you said, can you say that one more time, Robert?
It appears what you've shown on the site plan is with the exception of the connection down there at Sppa on the parking, and crossing over the city-owned parking lot. All of this is shown on the city-owned parcels, none of it's shown. Is that right?
Robert
was talking about right there.
North. So we need an easement there, is that?
At the south end there, where that parking connects to Sppa.
Yep, there you go.
It runs through the city-owned lot.
Those two trees are our city park.
Taking rid of parks.
It wasn't the pocket park we talked about, boys.
I think there's a bench there.
I think that's what Justin was addressing too, is that's another thing that we can take a look at, is kind of moving that building a little bit, maybe losing a unit or two, but actually creating some sort of, you know, retaining the park there. Because yeah, that's not much of a.
Well, I talked about a coffee shop with some sort of outdoor.
Correct, yeah.
Green space.
Yeah.
And if the property owner to the west is open to a conversation, we'd welcome that. I think part of the challenge here with this site is it's a little narrow. It's small, as Jackson says, not even an acre. So you can see we're doing that angled parking. We're trying to get as much in there as possible, but if we could even get 10 feet out of the west property boundary, or even, you know, that entire green space, maybe keep some type of buffer obviously in between, but I guess we would welcome that. So if there's an introduction that, you know, Robert and someone could make, we'd be all ears for that.
I wanted to say this, I think it is worth another conversation with him, but I did talk to him a couple years back when we were looking at the site, and he was unwilling at that time to give up any room. But, you know, 2 years have gone by, so maybe he's changed his mind.
I have access. I do have access to his ear. So if you like, I can make a call to him and find out if he is interested in having about that.
Well, I would say a meeting like this is more for them to make decisions than for you. And their decision is, have they heard anything from you, which is going to keep them from wanting to keep pursuing this and maybe spend some money on doing some more analysis and maybe doing a little more on the architecture side. This is, like I said, this is the first time I'm hearing about this, but I'll work with them. I've got some questions, I'd like to find out what the EDA has invested in the land and what the expectation is that the EDA would get out of the land. I'd like to understand their, financing needs. At some point in time, we'll start to figure out if they have a financing gap in their, when they do their pro forma. And then we'll start to figure out, are there ways we can help fill that gap? I'd like to, with the architecture, the same questions you have. I have some questions about the site plan, the architecture. The parking ratio seems a little tight to me. So I'd want to look, I don't know what the city code requires. I'm sure they've looked at that, but, and then, I think probably after we've had all these discussions, maybe we come back one more time. I like to do these kind of agreements incrementally. I don't know what you guys' experience is, but a lot of times you can do like a preliminary agreement as a first step before we start. If we were going to do tax increment financing or something like that, that's an expenditure of time and money on our part to do that. And so that preliminary agreement would lay out some of that, and then we'd take a next step with a full agreement. Is that kind of what you're used to doing?
Right.
Yeah. In terms of the coffee shop, I can tell you your new city manager / executive director drinks about 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day. So I'll do my part in keeping it running.
I figured he'd want that coffee shop on the other end.
Like a pneumatic tube under the room. So that's my 2 cents, and I don't know that you need to act on anything today.
But I haven't heard no. I think everyone here is pretty. I did have a question though, when we talked a couple of years about this site. Isn't there a big pipe going through there somewhere?
It's the north end.
That, we don't want to get that forgotten. All of a sudden, we're talking about underground parking and that's a good sized pipe. I don't know.
I don't think they're talking about underground parking though.
We had just talked about it. Yeah.
Isn't that pipe located like,
Yeah,
right along
footings
here?
and stuff like that. We know it's floating.
where is that pipe that you said?
I don't know, but I just know it goes through. There's a lot talked about.
I thought there was one right about.
We got a lot of pipe,
We got big gas lines in there, but we also have,
There was a
Sorry, I can pull up
I don't know. if
data
it's
link
funds
and then you
or
can see what,
there's-
There was a utility easement running around right here, so I don't know if that's it or not, but
do you want me to pull that up so you can see it?
I'm sure if you could.
Yeah.
Start digging and all of a sudden.
Right.
Oh, now here's the whole project. Yeah, and we mentioned it a couple of years ago, but I don't know where it is or how big it is or.
Yeah, I don't-
That's all I know.
I don't think the building as they show it, I don't think they have any structure sitting on top of any utility there, based on what I recall about the site. But I mean, we can pull utility plans for them and they can look at that as part of their
Okay.
process for sure.
And that's Margaret. That's sanitary sewer. Storm sewer. Water, electric. Yes, where are we here? Oh, oh, shoot.
It's covered.
Yeah, fully covered. Well, maybe got too much at once. So what do you think that pipe was? Which one should I focus on first?
I think you have storm and gas over there.
Okay, and
But,
then can somebody direct me on, is it like right in here? Is that where we're looking? Left,
No,
there's Third. Helen, Margaret. There's North St. Paul Drive. There's 7th. So would it be in right here? It's the one, yeah, it's right here. Where this is, where the red is.
Those up here.
Yeah.
Well, this is, let's see.
Right across from-
Seventh and Margaret.
Central Park, so we're done.
Right here. So there's a line.
And that was that sanitary sewer? I've lost track of what that was now.
Yep, that one is
Coming down the.
storm sewer. So here's the sanitary sewer. And then
Yeah, that's out in the street. Yeah, there.
The big gas.
the water. Yep,
Oh, the
Right.
water one though, that's going through
It's,
at the top there.
it's a connection to those two buildings that were there.
okay,
Sewer, where's sewer? Again,
Yeah, we already went, I think we already went over that.
yep, so
That looked good.
The only problem I see is maybe the water. There's the water line. from Easement.
yeah,
it's free.
well, that's right, this wouldn't show it's on private property. This would just show the public streets.
Oh, it should show everything. Well, as long as it's in an easement.
I think it's something we could kind of continue to work with staff on and see if it is a potential issue. Obviously, that probably be step number 1, make sure we're not broken any of those lines.
Okay, let's get back.
I mean, I guess just, for my summary, it seems like generally speaking, it's something worth kind of continuing dialogue on. We'll continue working with the city manager, I believe John Stark, right? Yep. And we get your contact for John and we can plan to meet, in the next upcoming meeting, if that works, or we can kind of work through you on next step. That makes sense to everyone.
Sounds good. Great. All right, gentlemen, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I don't even.
We'll find each other.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, guys.
So I do recognize you from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago.
Did Soren take something up for you? Did Soren take something up for you?
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
To close that.
Oh, from the last.
Okay, so moving on.
Hey, John, did you know, do you ever know a developer that didn't have a financing gap?
No, they're gonna have a gap.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see, moving on, update redevelopment master plan review.
Yeah, I'll grab that real quick and then I think Don's in the room. He was in attendance as well. So we had we reviewed the progress on the plan. They actually emailed that out. Lisa, is that something we can share? We can just share with the EDA as well, just the progress on that, or I don't see why we couldn't. I think you emailed it out earlier, but it's nothing we need to look at right now. So they're working through the redevelopment master plan and the updates on it. I think that the design group at least has starting to get their arms around what we're trying to do with the document. And there were a couple things that came out of the last meeting. I guess maybe the most important is and maybe I'll back up just a bit, John, for you. Have you looked at the redevelopment master plan? Are you familiar with the document we're talking about? I'm guessing
Well,
not.
yeah, I've skimmed it, and then Lisa put together some notes from the meeting in December, and I went through those notes as well.
So the intent, the original intent with the redevelopment master plan was that we had a lot of opportunities in town. It was a collective effort between council planning and the EDA to try to get more definition around what is it that, what should this be? What does it need to be type of exercise, which created the original document. I think of it more as a kind of a refinement of the comp plan. Where the comp plan is always at 30,000 feet. We try to drill down a little bit more and say, okay, well, what would make the most sense in these specific areas, or even in some cases on these specific lots. And it just got outdated. So what the intent of the redo here, or the update, is to try to make sure that we get alignment amongst the EDA, the planning, HRA, council, et cetera, on what is the vision for the town. Just like this parcel where you're just looking at across the street. Should that be housing, or should it be something else? If it's housing, what should it look like? Just trying to caption that stuff and get to an end. A couple things that have come out of that. We get to the point of, well, what should it look like? And when we got to that conversation in the redevelopment master plan meeting a couple months ago, we said, well, there's a design review manual for downtown. It should look like whatever the design review manual says. And then it was brought up, well, that's not an official document. Nobody's ever approved it. Those are just suggestions. So we're trying to get to a cohesive vision amongst the key commissions and authorities and council in the city on what is, what do we want them to be and what do we want them to look like? Because there's a couple things that snuck through over the last handful of years that I'd say the consensus is we'd rather not have it, but it happened. So the main thing that came out of the last one is, I think it was in 2011, the EDA undertook with its funds a broad North St. Paul housing study. It was concentrated to the downtown district, but it gave us a good, this was before any of the stuff that we have now was in existence. The senior housing down in Commerce Park, all of the stuff that's going in at your block, and of course the stuff over on the new Sentinel building on the old City Hall site. So one of the things that we believe makes sense is to do a fresh housing study. This is not a site-specific housing, broader kind of downtown district. What do our capacities look like at this point? I think that it would make some sense to, in fact, when we bring it back to the EDA, for us to update that study. I think it would be good information for us to have with all that's happened in town, with the stuff that Oakdale is doing, with the potential of everything going on at Hillcrest. I think it would be our capacities over the next, 2 to 5 or whatever we look at, whatever time frame we decide to look at. That's my update. Did you guys pick up most of that, or?
Yep.
Okay. Don, I don't know, do you have anything to add from?
That's pretty comprehensive of what we've been talking about.
Okay. So, Kevin, since you're chairing, I think we should create, or what I would suggest is that proposal from, it doesn't, I don't care who, I guess, maybe get a couple proposals from there's Maxfield, people that are doing housing studies these days, to get a proposal to do a broader downtown district non-site specific housing study for North St. Paul. So we have that in our arsenal, that and then we can take action. If we get those proposals, we can take action maybe the next following meeting and authorize it to be the study to actually make sense to everyone.
Do that study, Robert.
What's that?
Who would actually do the study like that? Or something?
Well, I mean, in my experience, I've always used a firm called Maxfield. They're probably the mainstay in town, but there's others that do it as well. There's about 3 or 4 other kind of mainstay companies in town that do it. I think,
I might suggest checking with the Sentinel, the people that developed that, and see if they used a firm to do a housing study.
There wasn't one done.
There was not.
There was one done in 2011, and I can give you the information on who did that one.
that was the one that we did, Lisa, as the EDA in 2011. I'm guessing that they went out of pocket on the, I don't know if they got on that Sentinel. I don't know how a housing study wasn't done. I'd asked for it multiple times and haven't seen anything. So
My guess is that they would have done their own internal housing study and maybe not shared that with us.
Well,
They-
they're friendly parties, so I'm not sure why they wouldn't, but either way, I mean, having something like that in hand, particularly as we have discussions like the one we just had, somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to build 80 units. And we say, well, I'm not sure that's going to work. I mean, capacity is only, we got capacity for 10 GOs. That's what the experts say. We don't want people coming in town and building stuff that doesn't move. So I think it would be helpful in a lot. But at this point, I think we're just asking staff to get a proposal on it, and then we can discuss the merits of whether we should actually undertake the study or not. At another point, if we get our hands on a current and reliable study, we may not need to do that. I would agree with that, John.
Okay, so when you referred to staff, is that something that I should take on, or John will take care of that?
Between Lisa and myself.
Okay,
So before the next meeting, then we'll have some options presented to us, possibly of who could do this study for us, and then we can make a motion at that time to make a decision if we're going to move forward on it.
okay.
So if we're good with that, we can move on to the update of the SPPA activities.
Sure. So the Port Authority, a couple things on that. Of course, they're working on the Lilly stuff that was going to be discussed here in closed session. In addition to that, we asked them to take a look at the former ground round site and see if that property could be got. And they have only done preliminary work on it. They have nothing left or nothing to report back on that at this stage. In addition to that, we're kind of affecting I've been dealing primarily with the Port Authority, but that's really John Stark's role now. So I'm sure over the next few weeks, we'll be affecting a handover where he has affirmative control of our relationship with the St. Paul Port Authority, and they'll be becoming the primary contact, or he'll be the primary contact for them. And the only other thing I would report, and I don't know if you don't know this, John, because I just had the conversation between our last conversation and this meeting with the port. I did ask them that based on what we have going on with the Lilly building, the former ground round site, and a couple other things that we plan to get them on the agenda in person next month. I think there's a fair amount to talk, and I don't know that a lot of the group, other than the mayor and myself, have ever met with them. So I think it'd be a good idea for them to get them on the agenda to come in and talk to us. So that would be the extent that I have to report on the Port Authority.
Good. We're going to move now to the closed session discussion on the 2515 through 2517 West Avenue partial land.
Yeah, I think I got to sign off here, right?
Yeah.
Where Lisa can
What-
technologically just zap you out and bring you back in. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, to my knowledge, what I did in the past was edit the video and canceled out the closed session. So we'll just do what we did last time, Robert, and go ahead and sign out and then log back in, and I'll do the same.
Yeah, and so, well, you want me to sign out, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
Okay,
so-
and then, yeah, Terry, if you just want to text me when you're done, and I'll sign back in.
Yeah, legally, Robert can't participate in the closed session just with the way, the timing and the way he was
Okay,
not able to participate. So if Robert wants to sign off and then somebody can text him when we're done with the closed session, you can sign back on.
Yep, perfect.
but I have to read this first before you sign off.
correct. And then the only other question I have is, do you know what to discuss for the closed session? Oh, you-
John does,
okay.
John Stark does.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Here's some tidbits from a meeting I was at yesterday. This is by the Ryan Company. I'm waiting for him. The Twin Cities has the lowest rental vacancy rate of major metro markets in the US. Which is significant.
I know it feels like we're building a lot. We're so far behind. It's gonna take a while to catch up.
There's 0% vacancy rate for the 30% AMI that he was talking about. Investors are purchasing all the naturally occurring the NOAA properties. For a healthy rental growth rate, market vacancy needs to be in the range of 5%. And we're not even close to that.
Most of the places are waiting lists.
Metro area needs 3 times this amount of 15,000 units needed. Metro needs 3 times this amount, 3.5 billion of housing to meet current demand. The project level debt only able to cover 30% of costs. 9+ billion needs to come from public sources. So you talk about they can't build without.
No, even before the labor shortages and supply chain problems, it's just so difficult. And now with those, it's impossible.
So I don't think there's an awful lot.
Finish the housing study?
Terry was just talking about, he'd been at a presentation from Ryan Companies about the housing need. Well, I think if you go into the executive director's report.
Go to the executive director's report.
So Robert had asked me to give you a little background on my experience as it relates to EDA kinds of things. So I'm in week 2 as the city manager. I'll have to look at the EDA bylaws and see how you guys appoint a executive director. So I'm kind of making some assumptions here. But my experience, I've been working in redevelopment. Well, I came here as the community development director from the city of Ridgefield. I was also the EDA executive director there and the HRA executive director. I was there in that capacity for 14 years. Before that, I was the community development director and HRA executive director for Roseville. Before that, I did other redevelopment related things. And so redevelopment has kind of been my specialty for 28 years now. Given that though, as I said, the way the St. Paul Port Authority is recommending some projects be done as a joint powers venture, that's a new thing to me. And so there's new stuff all the time. There are plenty of other things I have experienced, and I am hoping that I bring something to the EDA that's helpful. I plan on taking an increasingly active role. As Robert said, he and the mayor have been, kind of filling a vacuum in taking on discussions with developers and those kinds of things. I think traditionally, staff would do a lot more of that legwork on the front end and come to policymakers a little further on in the process. Quite frankly, with developers, there are a lot of tire kickers out there. You wouldn't want me to bring every single developer that talks to me to you. You want me to do some vetting to see if they're legitimate. So like I said, I plan on taking a more active role as I go. I kind of look back at some of your former agendas. And so you've got like business items here. My intent is that those in the future would all have memorandum attached to them, like currently goes to the city council. So that when you get your packet, every item would have some background from staff and a recommendation, that kind of thing. One of the changes I discussed with Robert. So you've had 2 closed sessions in a row. That's really unusual to have a closed session. There are very few reasons to have that. My recommendation, based on my past experience, would be anytime we have a closed session, that we invite the EDA legal counsel, Soren Maddock, to attend and be part of that. And he is open to doing that. I think that's just a smart thing to do. Otherwise, I'm here at your discretion. I think there are a lot of programs that the EDA did in the past. There were like facade improvement loans or grants. There are other things. There are some other things I'm familiar with. So I think over the next probably year, I'm going to come to you, every couple of months and say, here's a program that we might want to consider taking on. Here's some funding that would help us do it. I would like to seek some grant funding to help the EDA's work. Grant writing and finding grants is a time-consuming process. So I couldn't do that by myself. So we'd have to figure out how I could get help to do that. I think, the adage is you have to spend money to make money. I think that we can find ways for the EDA to have more funding sources, but we'll have to devote some resources to that to make it happen. And I'm really excited. When I go through the community, I think the work that you guys have done is just awesome. And I think that there are opportunities to keep doing awesome work and to make, North St. Paul really thrive. And so I'm really excited to be here.
Right. Well, we're excited to have you on. Get
So-
some far on stable ground again.
So if you're there, you know, Henry, just make us look bad. You're on the right track.
Okay, so we'll move on to the treasury report.
Well, I just got it.
Can you share it?
A housing study, there's money to do the housing study, so
Thank you.
we do have a decent sized cash balance, so we're not in any, we don't have any issues, so 483,000. I still don't know what the $49,000 worth of land that we own is. We might want to figure that out.
John, we asked Don or I guess as a group, we did want to meet with city finance because the last time we reviewed the financials, this was kind of pre-audit. There were some things about, and we wanted to get a better to stand down while it's underway and until you got on board and everything else. So we're getting pretty itchy on that count, and I think it would be important that we carve out an hour that we can sit down and run through it and just understand how the city finance is doing the EDA accounting, so that when we sit in this room making decisions, we know the balance sheet and what have you. So.
And just to clarify, is that something you want to do as a group in an EDA meeting? Or
I think what we talked about was just the treasurer and the chair, but anybody's welcome to it. Not excluding anybody, but for expediency to be just so that Don has the ability to come back in the room and brief the team and answer questions.
Yeah, I can set that up. We would have to have something less than a quorum is the only reason.
I was just doing a head count off the sheet. You can get by with 3, maybe 4.
Actually, Don, Robert.
Yeah.
And I'm not a member,
No.
so.
No.
Yeah, sounds good.
Just let me know if you want to make those arrangements and I can set.
So Robert, do you have a report for us as a chair report?
I do, sir.
Okay.
A few things. Yeah, first of all, welcome, John. We've had a couple conversations. I am as well. I'm very excited to have him on board so I can get this back to a less than part-time gig. It's become almost a full-time gig. And so I appreciate having him on board. We did have a conversation earlier today, and he threw out a kind of a question, but he used a baseball team analogy, which I thought was great. He said, you know, we need to understand, are we going to be the Minnesota Twins, or are we going to be the St. Paul Saints, or are we going to be, I think a Little League team was my other option, which I thought was pretty insightful, because then I let him know that our original chair was Jerry Bell, and certainly Jerry's vision and desire was that as an EDA, we were more like the Minnesota Twins. We were active. We were out there getting things done. We were stirring the pot, maybe even building things ourselves. But you know, being a real driving force. So I don't think we need to cover it today, but I would ask that between now and maybe our next meeting, that everybody give that some thought about what do we want to be, and I want to. I think we want to make sure that we all come to a consensus. It's not fair to ask John at this point, still getting his sea legs under him, but maybe next month we can have a little bit of discussion about to make sure we're aligned on, as an EDA, what type of EDA do we want to be. And I think also I'd ask Mayor Furlong and you know, to query the council or however you'd like to do it, but to bring some feedback from council too. What do they want their EDA to be? So we can make sure that the tasks and the undertakings that we do throughout the course of the year are consistent with what everybody desires. So we also talked about, we've talked about as a group for several months about a dedicated EDA staff member. We've been told to wait until we got the new city manager. He was I think he was on the street for about 3 minutes, and I said, where's our new staff member? But understand it again, that's something that I've talked to John about, and he's going to kind of assess and again get a feel for what's right, what makes sense. I don't know that we'll be there by next month, but over the next, you know, maybe we can get a sense of what, depending on John's level, energy level, and everything else, we may not need one, but that we do have that we'll want to talk about here in kind of future meetings. Publish an annual report to the council, activities and what we've been doing. I do need a copy of that financial report in order to be able to prepare that. And what my intent would be, if it's okay, is I'll go ahead and prepare the report much like I did last year. I'll circulate it for review to the EDA. And then if we're all pleased with it, we can make corrections at the next meeting and hopefully finalize it. And then we can present it to council. And Mr. Mayor, we can part of a council agenda packet, or we can present it in person, however you would like that done. So that's all I have.
Against this, or do you want me to?
Yes, I can certainly.
Thank you.
Actually, I didn't make a copy of that, but I'll get another copy from our finance department.
Make a copy.
Is that something that can be emailed to you, or I can give it to you?
Yeah, if you email it to me.
And Robert, okay, I'll do that.
Yep.
Thank you.
And me.
And, okay. So Robert, is it just this last statement that you need, or do you need it for the entire year?
Encompassing, all encompassing. So,
Okay.
If you want to just send me what you got.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions on that stuff? That's all I had, Kevin. I can't see you, so,
That's good.
okay.
We're gonna move on to the mayor's report. He's writing some notes right now, so let's give him a second.
I think, I really don't have to just welcome John. I'm excited to have you on board because, like you said, or like Robert said, you know, we've been tonight the UDA, and we have staff member here for what do you call it? Our city manager hasn't been here, so, and we got a lot going on. So I appreciate that. We've done a lot of work the last few years. It's built up this time. And we need to put a nail on it, you know, and finish these projects. And like you said, there is room for improvement and only to be the World Series of the Twins. So let's do it. So I got
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I have a
Go ahead.
question? Terry, do you know the status of the restaurant in this space right now?
You kind of broke up there, but I think you said the status of the restaurant.
Yeah, in the Sentinel.
Yeah, so I talked to Brandon a couple weeks ago, and it's basically the design team putting together the plan and the build out of that. And it looks like it's going to be early spring, possibly late spring. It all depends on that plan.
Okay. And John, just for your information, the EDA issued has a forgivable loan agreement with that restaurant operator. And we can go over the details of that, but that's why I asked, just to get an update on it. So we haven't issued those funds yet. There's some criteria before we issue them, but we do have a forgivable loan agreement with that operator once they get in space. So.
All right. Any reports from any EDA members? At this point, I want to make just one comment about the people that showed up today in the site that they're looking at. I think that this city is poised to have some really cool things happen to it but we have to be really, really careful on just grabbing at things and putting them there to fill spots. And I know I brought this up before, and I want to bring it up again. I think these guys are probably more than capable, but I want to be real careful because I think there's going to be some really opportunities where some big developers are going to come in one of these days and say, we're going to buy all of these buildings and tear them all down and put in something. But if something's in the way that we didn't strategically plan for moving forward, I think that we want to be cautious. Here's an example with the Eli, with the building that we had talked about earlier, the Lilly building. You know, let's find the right fit for it if we're going to make a move and make sure that it's in the best interest of the downtown, that it looks aesthetically pleasing in that. You know, so
yeah. As I said, I've been doing this for a long time. The only times I've regretted developments we've done is when we aimed too low.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only times I've regretted things.
Yeah, and I think what they did on the corner of Margaret and 7th is wonderful. You know, and next year will be even better when they finally get everything cleaned up, and it's going to look great. It's a great vision, and I just want these guys want to come in and do that. If it could be as nice as what's happening across the street, well, we're going in the right direction, and that's what I'd like to see as we move forward. So
it's right across the street from City Hall.
yeah,
well, it's got to be nice.
It's got to be nice. It's gotta be.
Those guys did, but by the way, they in the packet they showed me, they did have an elevation view, a rendering of the outside of the building. I'm glad they didn't show it to the group because it was no good.
Kevin, I think we're completely aligned from that standpoint. I think the city was at one point where we had to
Just grab that thing. Yeah.
grab it whenever it came our way.
I don't think we need to now.
I don't think we need to. I think we're, there's not a lot of times in life you're given leverage. And I think this is at one point in time the city has some leverage from a development standpoint.
Yep.
And I think we need to make sure we utilize that strength appropriately.
And nobody's manufacturing land anymore.
No.
You know?
And the
I'm
other,
already carving out space over here off this map. I got a baseball field moved. I got.
You know, part of that puzzle is the community center.
Right.
The city is gonna hold on to that community center.
And you got the community center and the VFW, and you got a big space available.
Yep.
And
So, good. All right, any reports from staff?
I do not have any reports.
We're ready to adjourn. So, okay. All right. Robert, thank you for checking in on this COVID day.
Thanks, everyone. Good job.